a little bit. Good evening. Welcome to Montgomery County Council Vice President Tom Hucker's virtual Renters Town Hall. We will be starting in just a few minutes. Our Q&A session will not start until after our presentation, but if you have a question, you can use the Q&A function in Zoom, or you can queue on the phone. Good evening. Welcome to Montgomery County Council Vice President Tom Hucker's virtual town hall. Folks are still joining the call. We'll be starting in just a few minutes. If you have a question for us, you can use the Q&A function on your desktop or queue on the phone. Hello, and welcome to our virtual town hall. I'm Dave Kuhns, Tom's Chief of Staff, and I'll help moderate this evening. We're so excited that you've joined us tonight for an important update on COVID-19 and a discussion on issues facing tenants. Please use the Q&A feature to raise a question. We will do our best to answer as many questions as we can during the town hall. If we aren't able to take your question by the end of the night, please leave a voicemail or email us so we can follow up with you as soon as possible. Now let me turn it over to our host, County Council Vice President Tom Hucker.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for helping putting this together. And thanks to everybody who's joining us, and especially all our expert panelists. Let me introduce myself. My name is Tom Hucker. As Dave said, I'm the Vice President of the Montgomery County Council and the District 5 representatives. I really appreciate everybody spending their time joining us this evening. There's an awful lot that's on everyone's mind, and there's a lot of places you could be. And we're glad you're with us tonight. This global pandemic is transforming everyone's life as we struggle to cope with the upheaval in our daily routines. Our core concerns are both the public health and the economic impact of the global pandemic. I've heard from so many constituents who have lost relatives, who are concerned about how they can protect themselves and their families, and then how they can make ends meet. These are scary times. They can be, despite all that, it's been an inspiration to see so many businesses and organizations and nonprofits pull together to support people who need it the most. We need those, we know we will outlast this virus. Hang on, Dave, I just lost my, okay.
You're on the side panel, Tom.
Yeah. Certainly we're going to outlast this virus and get through this together. And that's what tonight is all about. It's about staying connected to everyone and staying safe. So my colleagues and I can tell you, everybody on the County Council is working round the clock to mitigate this crisis. I'm proud to share with you that the County Council and my staff have acted very swiftly to provide a lot of assistance to local businesses and to residents who are facing just unprecedented pressure. And that includes a tenant rights bill we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to have more details on that and many other actions that we've taken before this, previous to this week, to protect tenants later on this evening. I want to let you know our government services are 100% focused on responding to the crisis. We have a lot going on right now. We have to pass, ordinarily at this time in April, we're very focused on passing next year's budget, but all that work is suspended for a little while we deal with the crisis. And we're all working 7 days a week to address our social service requests, our tenant issues, our health and human service questions, and many other questions. If I can help you directly, or if we can help you contact a government agency or a nonprofit organization that provides services or a business, please contact my office at 240-777-7960, 240-777-7960. And my email is tom.hucker@montgomerycountymd.gov. and we are eager to answer all your questions as best we can, or to refer you to state or federal officials who can help as well. Tonight, I'm really excited that we have important county leaders who will share information and answer questions about the government's response to COVID-19 and how it affects tenants, and state leaders as well. So our speakers include Montgomery County Deputy Health Officer, Dr. James Bridgers is with us. State Delegate Janelle Wilkins, representing District 20, right here in Silver Spring. We have our Director of the Department of Health and Community Affairs, Aseem Nigam, with us tonight. We have the Executive Director of the Montgomery County Renters Alliance, Matt Lozak. We have the lead organizer at CASA, Anna Martinez, and the manager of the Landlord Tenant Affairs Office at DHCA, Rosie McCrae Moody. So thanks to you all. I know you have a lot on your plates. It means a lot to me that you could be here for our viewers tonight. And I'm going to call on Dr. Bridgers to provide us an update on COVID-19. Dr. Bridgers?
Good evening, Councilmember Hucker, state officials who are joining this town hall this evening, panelists, and others. Let me provide kind of overview, but provide some additional details. Some may have heard it before, but as a refresher, it's always good to hear what we're doing to combat COVID-19 in the county. As of this morning at 10 o'clock, we have 19,487 cases in the state of Maryland. That's broken down to 3,843 cases, which is up 198 cases from yesterday, Sunday, which is about 5.4%. Unfortunately, across the state, we've had 20 additional deaths, and the state numbers still tend to trend toward females being more infected by the virus versus males, and there disproportionately infection increases in the African American community. Currently, there are 7,085 cases in the state of Maryland. Now, with all these data points that I've just shared, many often ask, what are we doing? Well, we are increasing our testing capacity. Yesterday, we met with Prince George's County and other state officials regarding the number of cases combined between Montgomery County and Prince George's. Montgomery County and Prince George's make up 47% of the cases. Of that breakdown, 17% of those cases are in Montgomery County, with 30% of those cases in Prince George's County. So we're looking at aggressive measures and strategies to identify testing sites in all those zip codes that you've often heard in Silver Spring and Wheaton and Adelphi and other areas that kind of border not only DC, but Prince George's and Montgomery County. We have increased our testing sites. If you recall, a little over 2 weeks ago, we began testing at our vehicles emission tests in White Oak. Last week, we tested at our Wheaton Regional Library. And today we began testing in Germantown. So let me just recap that. On Monday, we will be testing at our Germantown Health Center. On Tuesday and Thursday, we're testing at our beach sites. And on Wednesday, we're testing at our regional library. Last week, Governor Hogan shared that he had obtained the test kits. They haven't been broken down regarding the allegation amongst the counties. However, we have entered into an agreement with yet another testing provider. So we will have 3 labs available to test the number of cases, the test kits that we will send out. We're also looking at expanding. We've had the state come down to look at the fairground to see if we can possibly have a walk-up or drive-through testing. So as we begin to get more kits, we want to be able to test more. We want to be able to identify those who may be positive, to look at not only isolation and quarantine, but making sure they get the appropriate diagnosis. We've been working with providers and hospitals to expand our testing capabilities. MedStar Health has a drive up site. It's free testing. A provider will give you an assessment and you will be able to get a test there. We've also looking at some of our provider net clinics to provide them with education and testing and possibly using their sites to begin testing to our vulnerable populations. We are also staffing and have solicited volunteers from our minority health population within Health and Human Services to staff a provider helpline similar to our mobile testing sites, where a number will be provided to the community. Individuals who may not have insurance or may be underserved can call that number, get a test similar to the system, and be able to go to one of those sites. Now, much has been said about our long-term care facilities and our assisted living and our congregate living housing. We've been working with the state. They've put together what's been kind of interchangeably used as GO teams or strike teams. We're working with them. At the local level, we're providing support and consultations to our assisted living and our long-term care facilities and our developmental disability providers. We've conducted a webinar Friday and today for about 900 providers across those three areas. So we're working with those providers to ensure that they have the safeguard and measures in place. The state is also providing support through their Tiger teams and strike teams to come down to do clinical assessment, triaging challenges, looking at guidance, looking at quarantine, isolation protocols in that vein. And then lastly, we're working with the state to handle the hospital surge. We received notification this morning that we've increased the number of ventilators we have in the county from 167 to 383 in partnership with the state and with the county, and Councilmember Hooker and other legislators in the county have provided. Washington Hospital Center is being configured, the infrastructure to be able to handle up to 200 beds. We're also looking at Holy Cross and handling, having 80 additional beds due to anticipated surge. And let me just talk about the surge again. We're looking at the number in the hospitalization. A little over a month ago, we were looking at a 26% hospitalization, and that's gone down to about 22%. So we're seeing slight upticks, but I don't want anyone to be comfortable. We still need to keep those practices in place. We need to social distance. We need to wear face covers when we're out in the community, and we need to repeatedly and continuously wash our hands. And so that's kind of a snapshot where we are from the Health and Human Services, Public Health Services Division. I'll stop there. If there are any questions, I can entertain them at this time.
Great. Do we have any questions for Dr. Bridgers before we move on? From Shay, Dr. Bridgers, if a person tested positive earlier in the month, but they're asymptomatic, should they be tested again?
So Shay, if an individual has been tested because there are no drug therapies and or treatment, there are other tests that are out there. I would say if you begin to have symptoms again, you should get retested, because we have seen cases, and the literature shows that individuals who have tested positive for COVID-19 are still at risk for transmission or contracting the virus again.
We'll take questions from Misha, Raul, and Stephen, and then we'll move on with the presentation. Misha?
Hi, it's Misha. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So Governor Hogan has already put forward a plan around how Maryland would open. What if Maryland moves to reopen as a state before our county agrees and is on the same page, and before residents feel safe? What are you all doing to make sure that doesn't happen?
So at the Health and Human Services and in collaboration with all of the services that we have on the Health and Human Services, we're meeting daily with our partners in the county with the county executive and with individuals and the Maryland Department of Health. So we would advise the governor based on our capabilities. If we aren't ready to open up, then we would strongly discourage any opening or any relaxed practices. And that's pretty much what Dr. Gales, the health officer, has communicated to Deputy Secretary of Health, Fran Phillip, at this time.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yes. Question I have, first of all, the question, can you repeat those days that where they're going to be testing on tomorrow? Tomorrow and Thursday, I think you said.
Sure. Tomorrow, the testing occurs at our vehicle emissions site in White Oak. On Monday, they occur at the Germantown Health Center, and on Wednesdays at the Wheaton Regional Library.
Okay. And who should be tested? Who is considered at risk to be tested, even if they're not showing symptoms?
Well, anyone who has an underlying health condition, if you have a respiratory illness, if you have a history of cardiovascular disease, if you are immunocompromised, if you have any history of an illness in your family, you should seek consultation with your provider if you're not symptomatic. But what we like to say now is everyone should act as if they or individuals they know may be positive or symptomatic for COVID-19. You should keep those practices. So the answer to your question is I would consult my provider, and if you feel sick, you should immediately let them know. The CDC has issued additional guidance regarding symptoms such as headaches, such as loss of smell, body ache, congestion. So there are a whole host of new identifiers, if you will, that are coming out, and we're going to post those on our website if they're not posted now. There is no set playbook for the symptoms, and this has evolved over the past couple of weeks. So if you're sick, my sincere and professional advice to you is to contact your primary care physician. If you don't have a primary care physician, you can dial 240-777-1755 and speak with one of our communicable disease nurses. They're providing recommendation and or guidance. And as I indicated earlier in the presentation, we're looking at having a hotline that could triage some of those symptoms. So if you don't have a provider at this particular time, this particular mechanism would allow you to speak to a clinician to determine if you are a candidate or if you're presenting for symptoms, and to get you into testing, to get your status, to know your status, and if you are in a positive status, give you additional guidance to either quarantine or isolate yourself from others, which is part of the contact tracing scheme.
Thank you, Dr. Bridgers. And then one final question from Raul. And then if you have any other questions for Dr. Bridgers, he may be able to stay and answer them on the chat. Raul?
Sure. Yeah, Dr. Bridgers, I'm trying to understand if you could speak to the accuracy of the test. I think some of the folks are receiving false positives, probably inaccurate diagnosis. If you could just speak to the accuracy of the test.
So Raul, normally when we get the test from the labs, they pretty much identify those individuals who have the COVID-19 strain of the virus. We have received some tests where it has been a coronavirus, but not the current strain that's causing the pandemic. And so in those cases, our clinicians will triage those cases and identify those cases that are COVID-19 specific. If we had early on in the testing, we had a confirmatory process where we would send the lab results to state, and state would run an analysis to discard any false positives. And then if there was still some challenges, they went to the CDC. but the state is looking at it and others are looking at ways to streamline. So if they are false positives, our clinicians will pick up on that and advise you accordingly. More often than not, you will receive a call if you have a COVID-19 positive outside of any other strains.
Great. Thank you very much. Again, it's Montgomery County's Deputy Health Officer, Dr. James Bridgers, who's doing excellent work. If you have any other questions for him, please leave them in the chat or use the Q&A function. He'll try to get to as many as he can before he has to leave, and then our staff will follow up. Councilmember Hucker.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, I'll read slide 3. Great. So just, I know there's a lot of folks on here that I'm longtime friends with, but just to introduce myself, I'm a longtime tenant like you, was at the Georgia Towers and many other apartment buildings for a long time. Now the Georgia Towers is called The Point for many years before I was able to buy a house. And I represented District 20 as a state delegate in the Maryland General Assembly for 2 terms before I moved on to the county council about 5 years ago. This is my 2nd term on the county council. I serve on the Public Safety Committee and I chair the Transportation and Environment Committee. And I've worked on, I used to be a community organizer for many years and a tenant organizer, and have worked on economic justice and renters' rights issues for many years. Since I've been on the council, I've spent a lot of time focusing on improving the quality of life for our tenants. I teamed up with then council member Elrich, who sat to my left on the county council for 5 years, to pass the renters' rights bill that the Renters Alliance and CASA and other groups helped us pass, to require a regime of inspections of all of our rental properties in Montgomery County on a date certain time schedule every few years, and it's set increasing fines and penalties for landlords that don't provide healthy and safe conditions for their tenants. That has resulted in, for example, the inspections of the enclave, which have brought on large fines to the owners of the enclave, and even a lawsuit to address the longtime problems there with mold and many other health issues. I also sponsored the air conditioning bill, the bill to require air conditioning in all rental properties that passed last year with the help of CASA and the Montgomery County Renters Alliance and many other organizations. I think we're at the next slide. So the council, since we passed this, since we have been confronted with the coronavirus crisis, we've been dealing with the crisis on at least 2 major levels. One is the public health side. We've passed appropriation of $10 million for our hospitals, because so many of them the last thing we could allow to happen is for our hospitals and our healthcare facilities to be overwhelmed with the number of of corona patients out there. So we provided $10 million to them to provide additional PPE for them, personal protective equipment, and additional staffing, so that they could prepare for the surge in the number of coronavirus patients that they were going to be facing. We also passed $250,000 for Manna Food Centers, which is a nonprofit that does fantastic work year-round. But since so many of our families that are facing food insecurity normally get their meals, some of their meals, from the school system, and the school system is closed at this time, we spent some additional money on Manna to provide emergency food assistance to our families that are facing food insecurities. And finally, we spent another $250,000 on our hotels and motels to buy blocks of rooms for our beleaguered and overextended healthcare workers, so that they could, rather than driving, you all know as well as anybody how expensive the cost of living and the housing prices are in Montgomery County. Many of our healthcare workers commute to Charles County, Calvert County, Frederick County, Carroll County after their shifts end. And we don't want them having to do that. We don't want them having to expose their families to a virus they may have been exposed to at their workplace. So we bought up a block of hotel rooms at very discounted prices from our local hotels and motels to allow our healthcare workers to go to those hotels and motels and get some rest before they return to their 2nd or their 3rd shift. And then on the right side of that slide It shows the Public Health Emergency Grant Program, which is a $20 million grant program we stood up to support our beleaguered small businesses in Montgomery County, particularly restaurants and retail facilities that have had to close because of the emergency order from the governor. I fought to get 2/3 of that I proposed set aside for restaurants and retail. On my colleagues didn't support that, but we were able to get $5 million of the $20 million reserved for restaurants and retail. And then we added another $5 million last week. So there will be at least another 10 million of 25 million reserved for restaurants and retail. The rest is all for open for all the businesses in Montgomery County that are facing severe economic hardship right now. They can apply for this grant. They can win grants up to $75,000 to help them stay open or reopen as soon as possible, as soon as it's safe. And we also, my colleagues and I, appropriated $5 million in emergency funding in financial assistance to our county residents who have severe economic hardship right now, another $1 million to be allocated through our county nonprofit partners for our social safety net services as well. The county government, I mentioned the additional $5 million we added to the Public Health Emergency Grant Program last week. We also have been working very closely with Dr. Bridgers and Dr. Gales and their staff daily to stand up the guidelines that the CDC has put in place, and even stricter guidelines for Montgomery County. So the guidelines that you're aware of, that like the requirement to wear a face covering when you're in public, that's a product of an order from our health officer, from Dr. Bridgers and Dr. Gales, but in collaboration with the county council. We spent a lot of time on orders like that. We have also been advocating to the governor, since we can't do clearly everything in Montgomery County, and we don't have the legal authority to do everything to protect our residents. We have asked the governor to spend $500 million out of the state's rainy day fund for the small businesses in Montgomery County. Our comptroller, Peter Francho, urged the governor to do that a little while ago. I organized a letter from my colleagues and I to back up that request to the governor, and we've organized that, and we sent that off as well. We also organized a letter asking for the release of demographic data. If you've seen the recent media coverage of the fact that most patients that are facing COVID and exposed to it and are suffering from it are Black and brown residents in Montgomery County, and particularly with the zip codes with the highest incidence are in 20902, 20904, 20906. That is the governor acting on a request that we sent over, asking him for the release of demographic data. We've also sent him a request to provide additional safety and tougher guidelines at our gun stores for social distancing and background checks for all the folks that are purchasing guns at this time. It's very disturbing that there's been a surge in gun purchasing in this crisis in Maryland, and that's the case nationally. And there's also been a surge in domestic disturbances and domestic violence in Montgomery County. Those two are a very bad mix, and we want to make sure the state is doing everything possible to make sure that those people who are hoping to make a gun purchase at this time have had a background check, as is required under state law. Finally, we're working with the County Board of Elections to conduct extensive multicultural outreach to make sure that all the potential voters, eligible voters, know that we have a June primary coming up as well and know how to vote by mail. So that brings us to tenant protections. I should say at the beginning that housing law is governed largely under state law, and we have to, on the county level, advocate to our state delegates, like Delegate Wilkins and others, to step up the protections for tenants, or to give us the authority to protect our tenants. We've been working in close partnership to do that. We're very glad that the state, through the governor's executive order, set a moratorium on evictions on utility and phone and cable TV and internet cutoffs of that service during the crisis. And we also are very glad that the governor required a suspension of any filings of evictions until the end of the crisis as well. And at the county level, we have spent $2 million so far, and I think that'll grow, in county funding for emergency rental assistance for our tenants that are facing severe economic distress and not able to pay the rent. And we have just passed legislation this past week to cap rent increases at the voluntary rent guidelines, which are a very low 2.6% this year. They were even smaller, 1.5% last year, and they're set by Director Nigam, who is on this call and can comment further, until 6 months after the state of emergency, which is terrific because we all know that the recession we're facing is going to greatly outlast the public health state of emergency. And so it's vital that we were able to win some protections for tenants that'll go beyond the public health emergency that the governor could end at any given time. And then finally, many of our larger tenants include our management companies, including Borger Management, Bozzuto, Equity Residential, Folger Pratt, K Management, Southern, have all agreed after negotiations with the county council and DHCA to suspend any rent increases during the crisis and to create payment plans for residents who are unable to pay their rent because of the outbreak, and they're waiving late fees for those residents as well. Okay, I think that's it for my portion at this part, and I'm turning it over to Director Aseem Nigam.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Hooker. First of all, let me show my gratitude for the county residents for their endurance during this very difficult times. No one has seen this kind of situation before. So this is the first time that we all are reacting to this unprecedented situation. That being said, we are doing whatever we can to help our residents in terms of disseminating information on our website. If you go to DSCA's website, we have information for the homeowners, renters, landlords. We have information on emergency benefits, supports. We have information on the code enforcement, affordable housing resources, filing for unemployment benefits. And also there's a link which will take you to Maryland COVID-19 website as well. That being said, you know, since this is not a normal operations, so of course our offices is close to the visitors. However, you can still contact us through 311 or by sending emails to our code enforcement or to landlord tenant affairs office. If you are experiencing financial distress, you can contact our landlord tenant affairs office and they can mediate on your behalf to see what can be done to resolve your specific situation. We also have our landlord tenant handbook on our website, which shows different examples and goes into details of what your rights are. And on the code enforcement, of course, this is not business as usual at this point. So we have suspended our regular inspections. That being said, we are still going to do any inspections which may be health and safety related. So our inspectors, are still calling different multifamily property owners to make sure that they have posted all the tenant rights posters that we send them. One of the questions that came up in our prior webinars was what the county is doing in terms of making the requirement for the multifamily property owners to clean and disinfect the common areas. So we looked back and we checked with our code enforcement folks. We can do enforcement for cleaning and disinfecting. If you look at the CDC guidelines, there's no specific guideline from CDC how often do you need to clean any common area. So we checked with our county's Health and Human Services office, and according to our website, we want those common areas to be cleaned at least once every day. So if we receive a complaint, our inspectors will get in touch with the property owner and will try to resolve the matter, the best we can. Also, as you just learned that this past week, the council passed COVID-19 Renter Relief Act. So we have updated our website. There are FAQs, there are different scenarios which relate to this specific act, which was signed by the county executive on April 24th, which will take you to different scenarios to see if your specific scenario fits, then what the answer is. We may not have, all the scenarios listed on our website. So as we receive more questions, we can always update our website and be, helpful in any way possible. In case you need to contact our landlord tenant office, Rosie McGray Moody, who is also on the line, on the webinar today, she can answer any questions. You can call 240-777-0311, or you call 311 and you can reach out to our offices. So we are here to help you in any way possible. Please reach out to us in case you have any difficulty, any questions which relate to landlord-tenant affairs or code enforcement or anything that DSCA does. So with that, I'm going to rest my remarks. If we have any questions, we can take those questions in a little bit. Thank you.
Thanks, Aseem.
Delegate Wilkins?
Hi, everyone. I hope you all are holding up as well as possible during this time. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us this evening. I am Janelle Wilkins. I'm a Maryland State Delegate representing District 20, which is the Silver Spring, Tacoma Park, White Oak area. So if you live in those areas, then I am your state delegate. I'm also a renter here in downtown Silver Spring. And with that kind of experience and background in current situation, I'm an advocate for renters in the Maryland General Assembly and have worked to lead and pass legislation in Annapolis. We actually have a COVID-19 case in the building that I live in. So it really, I think, adds to a lot of the concern around the coronavirus and the number of issues that we are all facing as renters. I want to thank Councilmember Tom Hucker and his team for putting together this town hall, and to the council member for his leadership across the county throughout this pandemic, which has been very, very much appreciated. I wanted to share a little bit about, from the state side, what is taking place, how we're advocating, what we're working on. First, I want to make sure that everyone is aware that Maryland General Assembly, we meet for 90 days from January through April normally, but we're currently not in session. We adjourned a little early due to the coronavirus, and we're not in a place, because we're not currently in session, we're not able to introduce or pass legislation currently. However, before adjourning, we did authorize $60 million in the budget for coronavirus response. We authorized another $100 million to be transferred from our state rainy day fund for medical facilities, food distribution, temporary housing, and other coronavirus related responses. We also changed the law as it relates to unemployment insurance to make sure that those who lose their jobs due to the coronavirus are able to apply for unemployment, which previously that would not have been a qualification. So right now, with us not in session, the governor is the power holder of the state in terms of his powers that have been expanded due to the state of emergency. And so in terms of us making changes in laws and working to get relief for renters, it's really, the power is in the hands of the governor. However, legislators have been advocating and working and pushing for various changes, and we've seen a lot of progress as it relates to releasing the race data that was mentioned earlier, so that we could have more robust data around the COVID cases, reducing the inmate population, expanding access to voting. Those have been issues that the General Assembly members have been leading on and pushing the governor around. And now it's really time for us to make sure that we see expanded relief for renters in our community. 40% of renters who make up the residents of Montgomery County. So what has taken place so far at the state level in terms of protections is that Governor Hogan, once the state of emergency was announced and once the COVID cases started to rise in Maryland, a number of legislators, we came together and we advocated for a number of renter-related issues, one of them being a ban on evictions. And Governor Hogan did put that in place. So currently, no one can be evicted. You cannot be taken to court. You cannot be removed from your place of residence. And that's significant and it's important, but this is not enough. We can't stop here. We have to make sure there's a lot more relief taking place. Rent is due this Friday for most of us, May 1st. And for many of you, I'm already seeing questions in the chat related to that. For many of you, rent was challenging on April 1st, and now it's even more of a challenge now that it's coming due again on May 1st. And we want to make sure that we're not just relying on the best intentions and the goodwill and verbal agreements of landlords, but that we have the force of law, that we have policy, and that we have executive action really backing us up to make sure that we have protections and relief. Because once that eviction ban is lifted, we hope and we want to work now to make sure that we don't see renters who have bills that have piled up, who have fallen behind and now are facing eviction. So there's some county policies that can be put in place, and they're definitely also at the state level that we are continuing to pressure the governor around. So just to give you a sense of some of what we are advocating for, because again, we were able to work with the governor around the ban on evictions, but his protections for renters has stopped there. So there's some critical additional housing relief, renter relief policies that we want to see done by executive action. And I wanted to share a few of those with you because it really does take renters speaking out both at the county level, at the state level, and with the governor to make sure that the stories are being heard, the impact is being heard, and that we are able to see these changes taken into account. So one is establishing a housing relief fund, robust funds at the state level that renters can apply for and get help in order to get debt taken down so they can be manageable. So that's something that's really critical. We are asking for rent and mortgage cancellation, because at this point, the way that it's looking is that renters, we don't want you all to hold the bag on this, right? This is something that through no fault of your own, we are seeing that people are just being crippled in terms of the rent. And once you miss a month, once you miss half a month, it's so difficult to become paid in full. And so we're calling for rent and mortgage cancellation. We're calling for a rent freeze as well, which means 0 rent increases. And I understand, I think it was mentioned that there was legislation that Councilmember Jawando introduced. Definitely want to thank Councilmember Jawando for introducing legislation to prohibit rent increases, 0 rent increases. I think it would be unconscionable for a landlord to raise the rent on someone at this stage in the crisis or even following the crisis. And so unfortunately, an amendment was introduced that allows an increase to take place up to 2.6%, which was definitely disappointing. But at the state level, we are calling for no rent increases at all. In addition to that, long-term payment plans so that renters are able to, over a long period of time, to pay down the debt that is owed. And if you're on that payment plan, that you will not be eligible for eviction once the ban is lifted. And then in addition to that, for people who are having their leases expire, to have the opportunity to renew that lease without an increase, and to make sure that we're not seeing additional fees if you decide to stay in that property. And we know that's something that renters are facing right now for those who are having their leases that are expiring during this crisis. So wanted to share those pieces of the advocacy and what we're calling for. I'm organizing legislators across the state and renters across the state to make sure that we are pushing for all of these things with the governor. So we need your action, we need your voice. We have a petition that's out there. We also have an action this Friday at noon that's going to be led from my Twitter page. And I just want you all to know that everyone on this line is working hard to ensure that renters are heard, and that the various issues that we're all facing as renters, that it's our time to really be able to thrive after this, and that there are policies in place that are there to protect us. So wanting to just basically tell everyone, make sure you contact your state level elected officials, your council members, and also your the governor, to make sure that renter voices are heard strongly in this conversation. So thank you again for joining the line, and looking forward to additional questions.
Great. And before we take questions, just gonna, we'll switch back to this slide, and we will send this presentation out. Councilmember Hucker does have a few upcoming digital events. Next Monday, a town hall with Congressman John Sarbanes and other speakers. The following Monday, a town hall with U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen, and Monday the 18th, a town hall with Congressman Jamie Raskin. Really important, folks, if you got on tonight, use the same call-in information for any of our upcoming Monday meetings. Monday the 25th, we're likely having a town hall with, for college students and employees. If you did call in, but you'd like to try using Zoom so you could see everyone's beautiful faces, you can register at tomhucker.com/coronavirus. We will send those links out. We also have contact information for Delegate Wilkins, the Office of Landlord Tenant Affairs, and Council Vice President Hucker. And again, we will send that out. Two things before we jump into the Q&A. We just launched a poll, and we're trying to gather important information about the situation that renters face themselves. Unfortunately, you can only access it via Zoom, but there's 9 questions, and if you could just take a minute, let us know if you've been laid off or furloughed, if you're struggling to pay rent, if you have access to food security, and other questions. The last question, you can mark that if you'd like a personal follow-up from one of our staff members this week. Lastly, I wanted to just give a shout out to State Senator Cheryl Kagan from District 17, who has joined the call. Thanks for being here with us, Cheryl. And now I'll just quickly read the names of our panelists, and we'll start taking questions. Obviously, Tom and Janelle, DHCA Director Aseem Nigam, along with several of his staff members, Matt Losak, Executive Director of the Renters Alliance, Anna Martinez, Lead Organizer at CASA, and Rosie McRae Moody, Manager at the Landlord Tenant Affairs Office. With that, we'll start, we can start taking some questions. Give me 1 second.
While we're waiting,
Hi, Cheryl.
Dave, can I just say a super quick PSA here?
Yes.
A lot of times, so Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville, and a longtime former renter, both as a young person and as a grown-up person. A lot of times renters move around and they may not keep the Board of Elections updated onto their address. In our first ever vote by mail, please make sure that your address is correct so you don't have to venture out on election day to cast your ballot. The ballots are going to be mailed soon. They're coming from Minnesota. There's going to be a delay. Make sure that it's coming to your correct and current address. You can verify that, and I'm sure that Councilmember Hucker could include that in some future update to you. But take a moment, go to the Board of Elections, and make sure that if you are a citizen and if you are registered to vote, please make sure that the ballot is coming to your current address so you can be sure to vote in this all-important presidential campaign year.
Dave, can you hear me?
Yes, Matt.
If we're doing PSAs, can I just do one little quick one?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I'm sorry. You and Anna. I apologize.
One of the things that the Renters Alliance and CASA and others are working on, particularly for renters, is to make sure that we're all fully counted in the 2020 census. And for that matter, also, my delegate, Janelle Wilkins, is on the State Complete Count Committee. And of course, I know Councilmember Hucker and Senator Kagan are very much in support of me, and all my colleagues very much in support of making sure that everybody is counted. If you're not a member of the Renters Alliance, you can go to our webpage, rentersalliance.org, and sign up. You'll receive our newsletters, and the newsletters have links for you to quickly fill out the census form. You can also fill out the census form without doing that. But in any case, the Council of Montgomery County has empowered us to reach out to tenants to make sure that tenants are counted. And I believe, as I say, our colleagues at CASA are doing the same.
And Anna, did anything you wanted to say before we started taking questions?
Sure. This is Anna. I'm the lead organizer for CASA. We're an immigrant rights organization. But for sure, we're taking on a lot of, we have our hotlines working, providing support regarding COVID. So if you have any questions regarding health, we can connect you to our health department. We have folks that are answering questions regarding housing, and you're more than free to call at 1-866-765-2272. Once again, that's 866-765-2272.
Great. And let's put that number in the chat as well. I also wanted to inform you that Joseph Eong from Congressman Jamie Raskin's office is on the phone. Our first question is from Nolu, then Sharon, Max, Rosemary, and Dory. Nolu?
Hi, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So I live in a senior independent living building called the Sanctuary in Silver Spring, 62 plus. Many of us have underlying conditions. Oh, and I also wanted to thank my own council member, Vice President Hucker, and my own delegate Wilkins, and our partner Matt Losak of the Renters Alliance for all the hard work and your understanding and the leadership on behalf of us struggling renters, okay? So my question has to do with this testing business. I'm not clear. I heard all those sites that the doctor named. So we with underlying conditions, can we just show up for a test at any one of those places? Or do we need a, some kind of permission slip from our doctors or something like that?
Dr. Bridgers, sounds like a great question for you.
He actually had to jump off.
Oh, we did.
Yeah,
Okay. My understanding, jumping in, is that while it would be great to have walk-in testing in the future, at this point we need an appointment. So you need to contact your primary care physician or another health professional to get an appointment to get a test.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks again for all y'all's work.
And certainly if you have symptoms, definitely be in contact with your primary care physician.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon?
Yes, hi. Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you for this town hall. It was very helpful, informative. So I appreciate you all being available, being accessible, just fighting for us. I greatly appreciate it. My question is, I'm an individual that traditionally wouldn't need help. However, I am a doctoral student who stepped out of her job, using her savings to finish her dissertation, was working part-time, the school's closed, and now there is a gap in my resources. I find that I can't get assistance because I guess I don't have low income, I'm not poor enough, but yet I desperately need assistance. So what resources are available for an individual like me who is educated? I don't even know where, or educator who has had the salary a year ago, but I don't even know where to begin. I applied for unemployment, still waiting for that. It's just overwhelming, and then you can't get through lines to talk to people. Like, I don't know what to do. And to just give you an idea of how I need assistance, I live in the Pearl, that's downtown Silver Spring. I was a good paying renter, even up till March, but like you said, April and May, April has hit me hard. They have been great working with me for payment, but I don't have income coming in. I don't have money. So how does an individual like me, receive assistance? Financial support.
I will just jump in. Sharon, thank you so much for your question and for sharing that challenge. I'm really sorry to hear about the financial difficulty that I know a lot of people on this line are facing. The number one area of financial support in terms of someone who's in the situation that you described is the unemployment insurance and the unemployment benefits. Now, we do know that the process for applying for unemployment has been just honestly absolutely terrible and frustrating, and the state is working, and we are making our voices heard very loudly around the need to quickly fix the website and the system so that it works for everyone. The state is working to put together some measures quickly to make the system work better so that everyone can get the benefits that they need. The encouraging news is that the deadlines are waived and that any back pay will be received once you complete the process. But unfortunately, right now, the best financial assistance is the unemployment insurance, and we are really applying pressure to make sure that the process starts working as quickly as possible.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Director Nigam, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I will just say that, you know, what Delegate Wilkins said. I mean, we are encouraging our residents to take advantage of the unemployment insurance. So from DSC's website, there's a link which will take you to the website. We understand that, you know, state's website was not working. It was crashing. It crashed a few times today. But what I heard was there was still hope that it was going to work. And assuming it works, what we know is the federal government is, you know, basically providing $600 a week in terms of the financial assistance. So we hope that with that assistance and with the state assistance, which may amount to $1,000 a week, which means $4,000 a month, it will help, you know, some in terms of paying the rent or for utilities, for other expenses. And what we are, you know, suggesting to our residents is, you know, that to work with their landlords on any payment plan. That being said, to pay whatever they can pay towards the rent. Yes, you know, the evictions are not going to happen. The courts are closed, the emergency is still on, but when the emergency is lifted and the courts do open up, the judge will have more sympathy if he or she knows that you, as the resident, took advantage of what all resources were available. So we are seriously suggesting our residents at this point to take advantage of whatever resources are available via state or the federal government. Yes, you know, there is a lot of frustration among a lot of people using the state website, but hopefully those fixes will happen sooner than later, and so that the residents can take advantage of those resources.
If I could jump in, Dave.
Yes, please.
I want to reemphasize what Delegate Wilkins said about the importance of providing, and with support of Senator Kagan, if possible, supporting some kind of fund to address this shortfall in rent. We have read that nearly 31% of people in April were not able to make rent. We expect that that's going to continue into May and maybe even further. And so we have to ask ourselves, obviously people who are still employed and receiving income should pay their rent. There's no rent holiday now. I want to emphasize that, despite what some people have heard. There is no rent holiday. You have to pay your rent. Even if you can't get evicted now, there are many landlords who are filing and have filed already for eviction, knowing that those eviction dates, those court dates, will become active the moment this emergency is lifted. So that continues. Renters are also receiving notices to vacate now. So you can receive a notice to vacate with 30 days, even though it has no force of law. In order to be evicted, you still have to be taken to court. A judge has to make a decision in favor of the landlord, and it has to proceed through the eviction process through the sheriff's department. But nevertheless, some tenants are receiving notices to vacate now. So the pressure on renters is real. And a large percentage, mostly lower income, but not entirely, are facing a rent shortfall that will have greater costs to the county than just people being evicted. We will have children in schools who are going to be mobile and not able to stay in the same school. We have a growing number of seniors in our residential population that are under tremendous stress, worrying, and couldn't possibly be forced out of their homes without tremendous consequences for them personally and health-wise. And of course, then there's an economic challenge, which our public officials need to be considering at all times when we have destabilized housing, and what that means in terms of the overall economy and people paying taxes and buying goods in their neighborhoods and so on. So I just urge everybody to keep the reality in mind of how big this problem is and what our elected officials need to be thinking about in terms of addressing the enormity of it.
Great, thank you, Matt. And we do still have hundreds of people on and over 70 questions. Our next question is from Sandy. Sandy, can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm still not clear. Are people living in apartments going to be informed if there are infections in the building? If people are infected? That's my main question.
I can address what was discussed by Dr. Bridgers in the last renter town hall that we held a couple of weeks ago. And no is the answer. The specific answer is no. No one is informed about someone's health condition due to HIPAA regulations. That said, it was advised by HHS and by the county executive and pretty much everybody on the call that tenants need to consider that everybody in the building has the disease and act that way accordingly. So social distancing should be in place. Building property managers and landlords need to be washing and taking care of their buildings. And I believe DHCA has put together more significant or substantial requirements for them to do that. But everybody needs to think that everybody has it and act accordingly.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
If it's quick, yep.
Yeah. To the man from DHCA, they distributed your memo here, guidelines for multifamily housing. We got it a week after it came out. Whose authority are we actually under? I'm in senior independent living. Are we under the county health department or the state health department, or who's enforcing the rules? Because people still have visitors here, and we're wondering if they should be.
Well, let me try to answer that question from DHCA's point of view. I mean, I cannot answer the question from HHS point of view, but we consulted with the county's HHS in coming up with those guidelines or requirements. So in terms of cleaning and disinfecting common areas, we can enforce those. That being said, CDC doesn't have any specific guidelines in terms of how often you need to clean the common area. So whatever requirement, what we sent out was that those common areas have to be cleaned at least once. So if we receive a complaint, our code inspectors will get in touch with the property owner to resolve any matter. But in terms of the specifics for HHS point of view, I cannot really answer that question.
And Delegate Wilkins had a follow-up.
Yes. Hi, Sandy. I just wanted to add that I did mention at the beginning of my remarks that there was a coronavirus case in my building. My landlord chose to share that, and it's something that is not required. And so my landlord shared it. They did not share what floor or where or who, because that's very personal, private information. But in addition to sharing it, they also put in place some recommendations around wearing masks inside the building and one person or family per elevator and things like that. But I think that's why some of what we need to think through in our response is having consistency and the force of policy, so that there's some thoughtfulness around residents in maybe every building having that courtesy, if that's something that makes sense. So I think that's why, you know, we're really working to think through the policies that need to be in effect and in place, so that residents can also be aware of what is going on as well.
Dave, if I may, I think it's more than a courtesy now. Director Nigam, didn't you put some requirements in place?
Yes, I mean, we made it a requirement for multifamily properties and also for common ownership communities, that this is a requirement to clean the common areas at least once.
A day?
A day.
Great. So if those common areas aren't being cleaned, please let us know so we can get that information over to DHCA and follow up. Julio?
Yes, I'm ready.
Great. We're going to take a question from Rosario. You are unmuted.
And I'll just translate her question. Rosario, ¿está ahí? Oh, está en mute, Rosario. No la podemos escuchar. Todavía está en mute.
Well, we can come back to that. Max had a question.
Yes, thank you. I had a lease renewal that was coming up for May, and they asked me to renew it early back in March with a fairly large increase. What's the timing on this new law? Is it in effect? Do I need to contact my landlord and have them redo my lease, or what am I supposed to be doing?
Director?
Let me try to take on that question. We do have, and I'm not sure if it really addresses your scenario per se, where you signed a lease in March when your lease was going to be becoming due on May 1st, and we can look into that more. But the way we are told, and we checked with our legislative council of the county council, if your rent is going to go into effect, the rent increase after the emergency, especially after April 24th, when the county executive signed this act into law, then your landlord either rescinds that order, that notice of rent increase, or should scale it back to 2.6. Let me give you a scenario which is on our website. Is scenario number 1. If you got a notice of rent increase, let's say on December 15th, and under the county law, you have to give 90-day notice to the tenant. So on April 1st, your rent increase went into effect, although that was within the emergency, and Councilman Hucker can jump in if he has a different understanding on this. However, the act was not signed into law until April 24th, so that specific rent increase is not limited to 2.6%. Now, in your case, you signed that lease 2 months prior to May 1st, and I'm not sure if Rosie McRae Moody is online from my office. You can contact us offline, and we can look into your specific situation and try to get you the answer.
If I could also add to the confusion a little bit, there is a line in the bill that says that the law comes into effect at the beginning of the emergency. Councilmember Hucker, do you have any sense of this of the law? Is what Director Nigam saying true based on his discussions with the county attorney, or because my sense is that it's supposed to affect everyone who gets a rent increase from March 5th forward, and there's some confusion about that, and I guess we've been putting out that information. So if we could just, if we don't know, if we could keep it up in the air until we can certify that.
Yeah, I mean, my off mute. Yeah, my recollection is Director Nigam certainly described it correctly. I'm not sure I caught all the details of the circumstance of this renter on the front end, but yes, it's emergency legislation, goes into effect right away. The shot clock that is in the legislation, the 180-day protection that is created by the amendment that was attached to the original bill means no increases over the rent guidelines for 180 days, beginning on the day of the rent emergency of the state emergency, which is March 5th. So, and there was a special amendment also passed saying that if any landlords had circulated a notice of a rent increase that was above 2.6% that's the cap, they're invalidated, right, Director, and they have to be reissued.
Well, yeah,
Is that correct?
you're right. I mean, as long as the rent increase was within the emergency and it took into effect after April 24th, and that's the scenario I was talking about.
Yeah.
So for those rent increases which are going to effect on May 1st, the landlord either should rescind that notice or should bring that rent increase down to 2.6%.
Right.
So any rent increase as of April 1st is not affected by this legislation, according to DHCA.
If the rent increase went into effect on April 1st, which was prior to April 24th date when the act was signed into law by the county executive, then this 2.6% limitation does not apply to the April 1st rent increase. And we went over this with the legislative council back and forth just to make sure that we were understanding it right. So, and this is how it has been put out on our website as well, scenario number 1.
And we will follow up to make sure all participants have the clear written advice.
Hello?
Our next question is from Dory. Dory, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. Uh-oh. Hold on. You there? Hello?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was listening through the phone too. Okay, the last question answered a lot of my concern. My situation is, but I want a little bit more clarity. My situation is my lease is to be renewed June 1st. My landlord has also been trying to get me to renew, I think at like 7% increase. But I knew this bill was coming along, so I wasn't, I have up to 30 days to renew prior to the end of my current lease. So I was just holding off until I had sound advice about how I should move forward. So what I'm understanding, I think, is that I need to talk to them and tell them I know about this bill, and they need to send me a new notice of my new lease at no more than 2.6% increase. And my question that I have is, what should I be looking for in the lease that would prevent them from raising my rent during the lease period after this emergency has been lifted?
Well, your rent can be increased only once during the lease term. So once this 180-day period is over and your lease is up for renewal the next time around, that's the time your rent could go up again.
It also cannot be raised more than once in a 12-month period.
Correct.
So if you're on month to month,
right,
it's not that they can keep raising it each month. Only once in a 12-month period.
Oh, very good. Very good to know. Okay, excellent.
And also, Dory, just the last thing, is in Montgomery County, you have the right to a 2-year lease if you want one, not a 1-year lease. So if you want to take advantage for a longer period of time of the protections that were put in place by the county council, you should talk to your landlord and keep in touch with the HCA about having a 2-year lease, because
we just
then
love that legislation.
Yes, because then these protections will be in place. Then your rent will be set for 2 years and not just 1 year. And
That would be wonderful.
that's
Yeah,
very unusual. I try to get the word out about that. 20 years ago, the previous county executive tried to take that away, and a number of CASA and number of us had to fight to maintain that, the 2-year lease provision. So
okay.
I really
They
encourage tenants to take advantage of that whenever possible.
Thank you. They offered me a year and a 15-month. They did not offer me a 2-year, so that's also very good information. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
and thank
Tori.
you for all the work that you are doing. Appreciate it.
The legislation that was passed in 2016, the renter protection legislation that Renters Alliance and our allies fought hard for, including Councilmember Hucker, specifically put in a requirement that you have to be offered a 2-year lease at each lease renewal. So please, if you did not get that offer in your renewal, the renewal is not formatted correctly. Rosie can speak to this for sure, but it is defective, and they have to give you a properly formatted rent increase notice that is prospective of 90 days.
And Candy,
Wow, thank you.
Candy would like all of you to clarify that it doesn't have to be at the same rate for the 2 years, correct?
Yeah, they can offer you a different rate for the second 12 months.
Okay.
But there was a discussion earlier with Director Nigam under these circumstances that if they offer you the renewal notice now, that the second year would also have to be at 2.6. Is that correct?
Let me check into that. Maureen from my office is on the line. Maureen, she's one of the investigators. I want to just get the right answer. I don't want to give the wrong answer. Maureen, are you on the line?
This is Maureen Harzinski, investigator with Landlord Tenant. Now the question was, what was that, Matt? Your question?
If you're offered in your renewal notice that falls under the current legislation that the council just passed to limit rent increases to 2.6%. If your renewal says 2.6% for this year and also offers you a second year, does the second year increase also fall under the protection of the legislation and limit it to 2.6% of the increase?
No, that's not what we were advised when we spoke with the county attorney's office, who also spoke with the council's legislative aid. So no, it just goes 180 days after the emergency. So not necessarily.
Hey, Maureen, since you're on the line, let me ask you this other question. Before this caller was asking the question, their lease was coming up for renewal on May 1st, and they signed a renewal notice on March 1st. So would this 2.6% be valid for someone who signed the lease on March 1st when in fact the lease was not coming due until May 1st or June 1st actually?
Yes, that's what we've been advised by the county attorney's office that advises our office, that would be their interpretation, that they are limited to the 2.6% increase because it's not taking effect until the law came into effect.
So Maureen, what about the line in the legislation that says it's supposed to limit rent increases for any increase that is taking place during the declared state of emergency beginning March 5th?
Well, I know it does not seem to comport with the language of the law, but I'm assuming that for constitutional reasons and contract reasons, you can't retroactively change the law. That's all I'm assuming, because I read the law the same way that you read it, and the interpretation that that we all have been advised by the county attorney's office says that you can't prohibit the rent increase until after the law became effective.
So it can't be retroactive.
can't be retroactive, even though it appears as if that was the intent of the county council.
I think it was.
Yeah, so if a rent increase went into effect on April 1st, that rent increase is not limited to 2.6 because the act did not become the law until April 24th.
Correct.
All right, well, I know we have a lot of people still on the phone, so why don't we take our next question from Rosario? And what
Yes.
we will have to follow up. It sounds like we'll be sending out an FAQ along with the presentation tomorrow.
¿Aló?
Claro, yo puedo traducir por usted si quiere. Voy a
Sí,
hacer la
por
pregunta en
favor.
español.
Sí.
Listo, o sea que usted hizo una frase y yo traduzco la frase y seguimos así, listo.
Perfecto. Mi pregunta es para el concejal Hawker. ¿Qué debemos de
My
hacer?
question is to Councilmember Hucker.
¿Qué debemos de hacer los inquilinos de la ciudad de Gathersburg que hemos pagado la mitad de la renta, pero no hemos logrado conseguir la otra mitad?
What should tenants who live in Gaithersburg do if they already paid the first half of their rent, but don't have any money to pay the other half?
Mi familia pagó $700 de renta, pero son 1,500 y los están mandando cartas de que estamos tardía con la renta.
So her family has paid $700 out of the $1,500 that they must pay every month, and they are receiving letters pressuring them to pay. So, ¿sigue la pregunta o esa era la última parte?
No, es la misma, porque nosotros mandamos una carta porque nos dijeron que en inglés, una carta para que nosotros pudiéramos estar en stop de la renta, ¿verdad? Pero mandamos la carta con el código del COVID-19 porque mi esposo está desempleado. Pero mis hijos se preocupan porque me dicen, lo van a echar a la calle, ¿qué va a pasar? Y creo que no es la única familia que estamos preocupados por qué va a pasar, ¿verdad? Con nuestra vivienda, con nuestra familia.
Sí, listo. Ahora le traduzco al concejal. Yeah, so she's saying that she shared with her landlord that, you know, her husband has been affected by COVID-19, and she's pretty sure that they're not the only family facing this challenge. So what is your recommendation to her and other families in this situation?
Well, that's not easy. I'm so sorry that she's facing the situation. My advice off the top of my head, and I'll allow Director Aseem to elaborate, is it's great she paid the first half of the month. It sounds like she is a candidate for the emergency rental assistance program that we have. And while there's a pause on evictions right now, in the future, she may need emergency eviction prevention assistance. So I think she should stay in close touch with DHCA and allow DHCA to advocate for her to her landlord. Director?
O sea que el concejal dice que primero lastima la situación en la que usted está. Dice que usted de pronto, dando su situación, puede ser elegible para el programa que tiene el condado, que provee asistencia financiera a las familias, a los residentes del condado. También lo que él va a hacer es dejar que el director del Departamento de Vivienda, el director Aseem, elabore un poquito cuáles son los recursos que están disponibles para ustedes, pero él les recomienda que se conecte con el Departamento de Vivienda para que ellos puedan abogar por usted y por su familia. O sea que yo creo que el director va a decir unas palabras. Director, were you going to say something?
Yeah, sure. So we are encouraging our tenants to talk to their landlords to come up with a payment plan. Yes, you know, evictions cannot happen right now under the emergency and the courts are closed. That being said, the rent is due. So it's good that you paid at least half of the month's rent. For the other half, we are encouraging our landlords and tenants to sit down and work out a payment plan so that going forward, at least, you know, there is some path forward in terms of how the rent could be paid. And as council member mentioned earlier, this $2 million of assistance, emergency rental assistance, hopefully that will help some of the residents, anguish about how to pay the rent.
O sea que, Rosario, lo que dice el director es que primero usted hizo lo que debería que hacer, que es tratar de pagar lo más que pueda. También está resaltando que ahorita en este momento no se puede echar ninguna persona de su vivienda. Y lo que ellos están haciendo, están trabajando con los inquilinos y el plan o la idea es que cada inquilino hable con el dueño de la propiedad o el gerente de la propiedad para poder tener un plan para poder pagar por la renta. O sea que muchas de las personas están pidiendo de ver cómo se pueden, si no tienen los recursos en este momento, pagar todo lo que puedan y después tratar de determinar cómo pueden pagar el resto de la renta en un tiempo más tarde.
Muchas gracias por su respuesta.
Thank you so much for your answers.
And Rosie wanted to add one point.
Hi, actually, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, hi, this is Valerie Whitby. I'm also an investigator with the Office of Landlord Tenant Affairs. I just wanted to add on to what everyone was saying, and hopefully this will also help Ms. Reyes and other tenants as well. When making these partial payments, that is wonderful. That is absolutely what we want everyone to do if they can't pay their rent in full, but also want to make sure that they're keeping very good records of how they're making these payments. So whether it's paying through the online portal, money orders, or cashier's checks, please don't give your landlords cash. Please make sure it's a way that you can track that information so that when this is over and if your landlord tries to take you to court, you'll have the documentation to present to the judge showing what you paid, when you paid it, and how you paid that money to your landlord.
Y Rosario, también lo que dice Rosy de la oficina del inquilino del condado es que primero, muy bueno que está haciendo, está pagando lo que pueda, pero también cada pago que usted haga, que lo documente, que si por favor no pueda pagar en efectivo y que lo haga a través de, del internet o con un money order, que guarde sus recibos, porque si algo pasa y tiene que ir a la corte, puede demostrar con los documentos que usted hizo esos pagos y cuándo los hizo y cómo los hizo.
Sí, nosotros lo estamos haciendo por medio de money orden, ¿verdad?
Okay.
Porque mi esposo se quedó desempleado de hace, pues, desde que inició esto del virus. Y pues nos sentimos un poco que a pesar de que los pidieron carta en inglés, que si no la llevábamos en inglés, que iba a haber una multa, tuvimos que buscar quien nos hiciera la carta en inglés. Y aparte de eso, a la semana recibimos cartas que estamos tardíos con la renta, que los van a cobrar multa. Entonces creo que no es justo que lo estén acusando a toda la familia, ¿verdad? Que somos personas esenciales, que estamos desempleados en estos momentos.
Sí. And I think Councilmember Hucker, you wanted to say something. Before that, I just forgot to mention, she did say that her landlord was demanding that she communicate to them in English. So that was another challenge that she had.
Yeah, and a landlord, that's not something that they can demand. It is important that whether she's communicated in English, Spanish, whatever language, that there is a written record of it. The landlord can easily have that translated. If the landlord has questions, they can call our office. We can help with that. Or even if the tenant has questions and needs help translating it into English, we can do that. But a landlord cannot make that a requirement for communication between the two parties.
And Dave, I could also offer to any tenant who's out there, the Renters Alliance is here to assist in any kinds of disputes, to guide you through the landlord-tenant complaint process, to help put you in touch with council members like Councilmember Hucker to provide you with assistance. If you have a question or concern, please contact us at info@rentersalliance.org.
Julio, thank you. I was just going to add, and we're so lucky to have Delegate Wilkins with us. One, as I mentioned at the beginning, housing policy is established at the really the state level in the housing article of the Maryland Code. I used to serve on the committee in Annapolis that regulates that. And so, one, we should all be calling on the governor to create better protections for tenants while the General Assembly is not in session. And I'm happy to try to organize. I mentioned three letters I think we've organized to the governor recently. I'm happy to do additional ones to urge him to put in place additional tenant protections beyond, to extend the special protections they have beyond this emergency. And then two, I don't know, Delegate Wilkins, there was talk of a special session in May. Can we expect any help from the General Assembly at protecting tenants beyond what they have right now?
You can expect a lot from the General Assembly, especially coming out this week and doing everything that we can leading up to May 1st to work with the governor to make sure we have additional protections.
Sure.
In terms of a special session, the leadership of the House and Senate decided that May would not be a good date for us to come back into session. So we will not be convening in May. However, it's unclear. We may convene at a later date this year. And I am certainly advocating for us to come back because I want us to have the power of legislation around the actions that I mentioned that we're calling for. And upon us going into session, these would definitely be the first bills that myself and several colleagues would introduce, and with the advocacy of support of the people on this call as well.
Good. Thank you very much.
Great. And I'm going to take our next question from Twana Hines.
Hey, Twana. Twana?
Want to turn off your mute?
If she's no longer there, Twana, we'll come back to you. Eric Mathis?
Hi, thank you for being here and doing this town hall. I was just checking to see what the likelihood of Maryland unemployment running out of funds before it's able to get distributed.
That is a very good question, Eric. I think what would happen is that the governor would have discretion to reach into the rainy day fund. We have funds over the years that we put to the side for rainy day, and this is clearly a very challenging time for us in Maryland. So what I believe would happen is that given the critical need, I think that I hope that the governor would reach into the rainy day fund and replenish what is needed in terms of unemployment.
Yeah, it's probably unlikely to run out because their website doesn't work, so nobody can apply so far. So hopefully they'll get that fixed soon.
That too.
Thank you, Eric.
Hello.
Hi, Twana, are you there?
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Hi, Steve Taylor has a question. Steve?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
On February 28th, the management office of the building where I lived in slapped me with a 12% increase, a little bit over 12% effective on June 1st. However, they told me if I signed the 24-month increase by the 15th of May, I will only get an increase that's about 2.45%. Now, should I refuse to sign that 24-month lease, which is within the guidelines, the 2.6 guidelines, should I refuse to sign it by the 15th of May, will I be required to pay that 12% increase? Or could I, because I asked for a delay in signing it because I didn't want to make any decision because times are precarious. So I don't, 24 months is a long time, and I don't know that I'll be working in 24 months from now.
No, the answer is you cannot be forced into paying 12 or 15% rent increase because it's going to take into effect after April 24th, and during the emergency period, any rent increase will be limited to 2.6%.
Okay, because they said that they're telling me that it's only going to be a 2.4% increase, but I'm required to sign a 24-month in order to do that. No, but if I sign a 12% or continue month to month, it's going to be a 12% increase.
No, they cannot do that.
Okay.
It has to be within the 2.6, but also I believe that, sorry, we'll come back to that. I had another thought, but we'll address it in a minute.
Hey, Aseem, can I jump in really quickly on this? One thing is you have to consider, because everything is in such flux right now, it's important to make whatever decision that you need to make that's in the best interest of you and your family for right now. So while we can say, no, they cannot do that, if you're thinking that this is a place that you want to stay for the next few years, whether because it's close to your current position or good for your kids' schools, or you just like the area or whatever, you have to make a decision on whether or not you want to stay or go. What will end up happening is that you can always reach out to our office, and I believe you may have spoken with another investigator today, in fact, for this very issue, but reach out with the specifics and, you know, have the investigator help walk you through what may be what's in your best interest. And this will go for anyone, regardless of it's a COVID-19 question or what have you, anything related to your lease. That's what the landlord-tenant investigators in our office, they're here for that specific reason. So you can reach out by phone or by email so that we can get a more in-depth look at your particular situation, more than what we can do here in this town hall as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, sir.
Great. I know we still have several hundred people on the call. We won't get to every question tonight. Please follow up with us. You can email us at tom.hucker@montgomerycountymd.gov, and I will put up the slide before we end with contact information for Delegate Wilkins and DHCA. Our next question is from Balker. Balker, are you with us?
Yes.
Great, we can hear you.
Okay, my question, thank you for hosting this meeting. So my question is, I've been this property almost 9 years. When I moved here, I have one child, and now in this time I have a 5 child. So I have only 2 bedroom. I'm trying to transfer to 3 bedroom, but property managers, you know, they don't require for 7 people 3 bedroom. However, by this argument and this corona came in, and my wife and me affected by corona. So we are hosting 2 rooms, and we put our children, 5 of them, on living room, and we are storing them, but we now recovering. So for future, is county help us anyway, low income HOC, or to rent 4 bedroom by any means? Because when I try to rent all apartments, they say my credit is low because of I have, you know, I make only 57,000. 4 bedroom, not enough 57,000. So anyway, you guys, anybody, I mean, resolve this problem. I was writing letter for county executive, and I was waiting. So that's my problem, and thank you for these problems attention. Thank you.
I mean, what I can suggest to you is, in your situation, you may want to approach HOC. I know that their vouchers are limited, but maybe there is a way that, you know, they have some assistance available in your situation, so that which can help you in moving to a 4-bedroom apartment or something.
Yes, the problem is I cannot, you know, they say my bank money is not enough, and my whatever money I'm making is not enough to rent 4 bedroom. That's a problem. I didn't file any, you know, bankruptcy, anything. I was working person. One time I was owning my own business, but I have that problem. So I need help from the county, if by any means is you guys help us.
Great, Balker. I think if we could have staff follow up with you. You know, there is assistance through DHHS, and DHCA may be able to follow up. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. We're going to go back to Twana. Can you unmute?
Yes, I think I'm unmuted.
Yay.
Yay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Twana.
Wonderful. Hi, it's Twana Hines, Silver Spring resident. Love living here, love this community, think it's wonderful. And thank you all so much for organizing this event tonight. I really appreciate it. So my question is about absentee ballot voting. I volunteered as an election judge for the midterms, and I'm very much committed to voting. And I'm just curious that if I, right now, get an absentee ballot, just in case, right? Like no one knows when COVID-19 will be over. So if I request one now, but say it's lifted later and I am able and willing to go either volunteer, participate, like go in person to vote, am I somehow blocked? Like, is it an either or? Like if you get an absentee, then you can't go in person. So how does that work?
That is a really great question. First of all, Tuan, it's great to hear your voice. Thank you so much for being on. Right now, the plan is that we are doing mail-in ballots for everyone. So you actually don't need to request a vote by mail. We're doing full vote by mail with some very limited opportunities to vote in person. However, if you are a registered voter, and you can go ahead and get registered right now, we'll post the link for anyone who's on the line who's not registered. If you're registered, you will receive your ballot in the mail, and you should vote that ballot by mail. So there's not a scenario currently where where even if the order is lifted, that we would then switch to voting in person. We are 100% on June 2nd having a vote by mail ballot. Now, for folks who have disabilities, who have particular reasons why they need to vote in person, there will be some limited sites, which I don't believe have been announced yet. Last time I looked a few days ago, it hadn't been announced yet. But the main point here is to make sure you update your registration. You can check it. I sent the link earlier and I'll send it again. Everyone who is registered to vote will receive their ballot in the mail, and you should plan to vote by mail on June 2nd unless you have an extenuating circumstance.
Thank you so much for taking the question.
No problem.
Great, and we have had over 100 people answer the poll, but if you are on Zoom, it is important that we get your feedback on a host of issues facing renters on our poll. Next question is from Elias. Elias, are you there? You can unmute. And then next will be Steve Medelitz. Elias? I'm sorry, if you can hear us, you can ask your question via the chat. We do have to move on. Steve?
Hi, this is Steve Metalitz. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry I butchered your name.
Sure, no problem. I really had two questions. One is, no one has talked about the federal protections under the CARES Act, which for some tenants may actually be stronger than what the county or the state provides. What is the best way for a tenant to find out whether property that he or she is renting is covered by the CARES Act, particularly with the smaller properties of 4 units or less? And my second question is, what protections are there for someone who may not have a formal lease, but is simply renting a room in someone else's apartment or house? We have a lot of people in our part of the county who are in that situation. And finally, just thank you very much to Tom Hucker and to my council member, and to Janelle Wilkins, my delegate, for all the information provided and all the leadership you've shown.
Thanks, Steve. Aseem, how much do you know about the federal protections? Can you talk about that?
Myself, sorry, I had muted myself. So I think there are 2 websites. I think there's one, nhlic.org or something, where you can go in and check if your property was backed by some federal mortgage. So you can put your address in, and under the CARES Act, there's a forbearance for 3 months if you're a property owner, and if you're a multifamily owner, you have forbearance for 2 months. So there's some relief available, but there are a couple of websites where you can go in and put your address in to see whether or not your property was, where the mortgage was held by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac per se. So that way you can get some relief. And what was your second question again, sorry?
The second question was about someone who doesn't have a formal lease, but is just renting a room in someone's apartment or in someone's house, but may not be able to make the rent that's needed.
Well, I'll have my 2 investigators jump in on this question. I mean, if there's no lease, I'm not sure if there is something that we can work with in terms of the documentation. Valerie and Maureen, do you have any specific suggestion?
Well, with regards to the legislation that was just passed, unfortunately, room rent, I mean, that does not fall within the county's, the Chapter 29, which is the county's landlord tenant law, and the rent increase legislation that was just passed and went into effect on Friday doesn't include owner occupied room rental. So it depends if the owner is living in the property and renting out a bedroom and then sharing the house. They don't need to get licensed as a rental property in the county, and so therefore they don't fall within the rental protection rent control legislation that just passed on Friday. Now, if they don't have a lease, then there are certainly circumstances where individuals have, verbal agreements with their landlords. And if it's an owner-occupied home, then we would encourage the tenant to have good communication with the landlord. And if they're unable to pay their rent because they're no longer working, then as we're telling every tenant and everybody who's in that situation to apply for unemployment, even though we know that that is taking a long time and it's not happening fast, but you're not alone because, so many people are facing that same situation.
Maureen, if I could ask.
I just wanted to add, it's really important that even though they live in a personal home, they still can't be evicted during this time. And
Right.
Especially, this is super important during this time, especially because there's a lot of discrimination where somebody has COVID, where there's folks that want to ask them to leave, and we want to make sure that they cannot do that. So eviction protection is for everybody. It's for people living in the buildings as well as people that are living in homes.
Well, Maureen, that's what I follow up on Anna's question or comment. If you're in an unlicensed room rental in an owner-occupied apartment, do the eviction protections generally apply, and do they apply under the governor's moratorium?
Yes,
I'm assuming you still have to be evicted with a judicial process. Is that correct?
Correct, because that is state law, and so they're definitely room rental tenants who are renting rooms in owner-occupied homes are still governed by the landlord-tenant state law. So it's everything with regards to evictions, failure to pay rent, breach of lease, tenant holding over, as well as the security deposit law.
Thank you.
Great. So just some final questions. Again, please follow up with us if you weren't able to ask your question. I'm just going to take a couple before we do closing remarks. We have to wrap up in about 5 to 10 minutes. So one question from Brandy. Do we know when the CARES Act funds of $600 will be distributed to unemployment claimants, panelists? Anyone know a quick answer to that?
Not soon enough.
I wish we did. There's a lot. I mean, if you email us, Brandy, we can probably try to get an answer from our federal delegation, but it's not just you. There's a lot of frustration with the speed of the rollout of the CARES Act, both from the small businesses that benefit and from the individuals.
Great. And then from Mason, what documentation, if any, is a tenant required to send the landlord if seeking a rent waiver or reduction?
Well, I can try to answer that. Well, you really don't have to send any documentation. If you've lost your job or you're furloughed, just reach out to the landlord and discuss the possibility of a rent reduction during this pandemic, or just have a heart-to-heart with the individual. And I don't know, maybe they will be able to accommodate that or work with you in a payment plan, but there's really there's no requirement that you provide them any documentation. It's just if they know the type of employment that you have, if there's any question and they ask for it, you're not prohibited from providing it, but you don't have to.
I'll just add quickly that currently landlords are not required to put in place or work with you on a payment plan, but you should absolutely reach out to your landlord and try to work with them in order to figure something out. And as was mentioned, it's every landlord is doing it differently in terms of the information that they need. I wanted to encourage everyone to make sure you keep a written record and receipts of the payments that you make, even if you're not paid up in full, you're trying to pay something, keep written receipts of your payments, and also document your conversations as well. And before you sign anything, do the best job that you can in terms of talking it through with your landlord. Make sure you have a full understanding of what you're signing and any obligations that you are signing.
And I think something that the Director Nigam said earlier, that if God forbid you end up in court, you're going to want to show the judge that you made every good effort to receive a subsidy, if there is one, unemployment insurance, if you qualify for it, and that you tried to work with your landlord in good faith to work out some kind of a payment plan, to pay partially or to come up with some other plan, and to be able to prove that you did so by perhaps having that discussion, or at least follow-up discussion in writing.
Great. And any final comments to our panelists? From our panelists, I mean?
Well, I know the Renters Alliance wants to thank Councilmember Hucker very much for focusing his attention on renters and allowing this opportunity. Unfortunately, this is not, we can't slay the dragon in one day. This is an ongoing conversation. And I think Tom Hucker's long history of as a state delegate and as a council member brings some real force to this conversation. But we will be having another renter town hall on Thursday with council members Glass and Jawando to keep the conversation going and address probably many of the questions that did not unfortunately get addressed tonight. But I do want to thank our council member Tom Hucker very much.
Thanks, Matt.
I want to thank Councilmember Hucker for his leadership and for putting this forum together. We are here to help you. So if you have any questions, please reach out to DHCA by calling 311 or 240-777-0311, and reach out to our landlord tenant affairs folks or our code enforcement folks. We'll try to help you whichever way we can.
I also want to thank the council member for his leadership throughout this pandemic, and also for his work over the years and working with my office to address a number of renter issues and constituent concerns. I want to encourage everyone on the line that we don't have many lobbyists, other than maybe the Renters Alliance in terms of their advocacy working for us as renters. What we do have is the numbers to really make our voices heard, and heard loud and clear that we need additional protections, because the truth is there are very little protections for renters currently under this pandemic. So what I hope to leave you with is the need to contact your state officials, the governor, and also your county officials to do everything possible to provide additional rent relief. So thank you again, everyone, for being on the line.
Anna?
I also want to thank Councilmember Tahanker. And also just a reminder that we have to have multiple strategies at the same time. So it's about knowing your rights. It's about making sure that you have all your documentation, that that you're staying still, that you're not getting evicted during this time. And at the same time, try to fight for other policies that really protect renters during this time at the county level as well as the state level. So for sure, this is a moment to utilize different Twitters and different avenues to make sure that we put more pressure to the governor to make sure that there's more protection for renters.
Great, and I did want to recognize Pam Luckett, staff for Councilmember Will Jawando is on the call, as well as Regional Services Director in Silver Spring, Riamberto Rodriguez.
Great.
And then finally, just a last request, if you are on Zoom, to use our polling function. We have had over 150 respondents, but this does help us gather important information about what our tenants are going through in real time. Now I want to kick it over to Councilmember Hucker to close us out.
Well, thanks, Dave and Julio, for putting all this together and building up such a great audience. Thanks so much to Anna and Casa, to Matt and the Renters Alliance, and especially to Delegate Wilkins and Director Nigam. I know you all are working 24/7 to help out tenants and everybody else in the county. And I really appreciate you spending not just tonight with us, but going extra long, longer than we expected, to answer all the questions that are out there. If you didn't get your questions answered, please email us and we will email you an individual response, and we'll get it to the top experts in the county to make sure we're giving you the right answer. I really appreciate everybody's participation, and thank you so much for joining our town hall today. I want to reiterate the county government as a whole, and my staff in particular, and I are all here for you. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I understand this is a scary and uncertain time for all of us. COVID-19 presents a huge challenge to our community and the entire county, but it's also a call to action. And you know, I think it's a challenge to us to come together that we have to unite to overcome. I can honestly tell you, it's so impressive how many residents have answered that call, whether they're making masks, or whether they're delivering emergency food supplies, or whether they're teaching our children remotely through our distance learning. So many people have dropped what they're doing and turned their attention to the most vulnerable residents of our county to make sure we all get through this together. So I especially want to thank our healthcare workers and our first responders being on the front lines, even in our grocery workers and other retail workers that are continuing to be out there putting themselves at some risk to keep our society functioning. And especially all the volunteer neighbors that are out there checking up on our neighbors and everything in between to keep us safe. All you have to do is look at social media or look at the listservs to have some appreciation for all the things that are happening all across Montgomery County. And it's really special to see this in Montgomery County. We are a unique place. There's 3,000 counties in America, and I really don't think there's as much happening to support all of the folks that are affected by this as are happening right now. I'm very proud to live and work here and to represent Silver Spring and Tacoma Park and White Oak and Burtonsville. And I know that if we all stay together and work together and continue to communicate, we're going to get through this together. So please go to tomhucker.com/coronavirus for information on the previous town halls we've held, and also to sign up on the next town halls, including the ones with Congressman Raskin, Congressman Sarbanes, and Senator Van Hollen. Those are all coming up. And please stay in touch with us. Please let us know about any ways we could be helpful, and stay safe and stay connected. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.